And in studio, I'm joined by Brezhnev Otieno, he's the advocacy manager at Towards East Africa in Eldoret. Joining us live is Nicholas Mayo, is the chairman of the National Parents Association, as we talk about the new circular that has been released by the Ministry of Education, the guidelines that will dictate how things will carry on as far as secondary education is concerned, and of course the amount of money that the government will be paying for students in day schools, in boarding schools, as well as national and extra county schools. We left it at making day secondary education free, of course, for the public schools. We'll see droves of parents enroll their students in the system and consequently lead to the deterioration of the quality of education in secondary schools.
I think, first of all, let me say I'm not against the so-called free primary education. I think it's just a process. Because it is enshrined in our Constitution, Article 54, every child should have compulsory free education. Then, of course, SDG 4 talks about every child having lifelong learning opportunities. Then, of course, the Basic Education Act, that is good. But then, of course, if you don't plan it in a manner that is acceptable, then you might find us having the same quality problems we had the free primary education, whereby you had many people, few teachers who could not have the ability, even the time, to know the capacity of each child basically to do both numeracy and literacy work in school. Then, of course, secondly, as the quality goes down, we'll find the richer parents moving their children from the public schools and then to the private schools. Then we'll have this same cycle.
Then do we also expect that the teacher-student ratio will also be largely affected by this move?
Definitely. When you have a large pool of people enrolling en masse in January, then, of course, we'll have more pupils and less teachers. Because currently you have a problem with the number of teachers in the school. They're not enough for our schools. So when you have more pupils, what will happen? Then I'm looking, for example, the case of Nairobi School. Do they have enough classrooms to accommodate new enrollments of many Form 1s? Then, of course, also the policy, the guidelines give those people who had left school because they didn't have fees, they're given the leeway to come back to school. So I think a very large number of people coming back to school. How do you address and deal with that?
Let's go to Bwana Mayo there, live from Eldoret. As the chairman of the Parents Association, from the guidelines that have been given out by the government, it says that parents will also be paying for the development infrastructure in various schools. But also picking from what Otieno is saying here, the deterioration of the quality of education in secondary schools owing to the free secondary education. How do you receive this?
Actually, for us as parents, we are better off now than before, because we will have more of our children transiting to higher level of learning, unlike when we used to pay a lot of money as fees, and we had so many dropouts. So as parents, it's a good direction we are heading. And as concerns the quality of education, is that we found out that the minute enrollment, there's a belief that when there are so many children in school or in a class, the quality of education will tend to drop down. But then as parents, we've benchmarked elsewhere, and we found that there are schools which have more enrollment and they're still doing good. Like Friends Kamzinga, they have almost 1,200 students. If you compare it to the school which has only 200 students, Kamzinga still does much better than the school which had only 200 or even less 100 students as enrolled. So we are thanking the government for giving us the free education. And going forward, we, as parents of this country, we are urging the government to give the spirit. We will give them enough support because we know actually the benefits will be our children and as parents. What we don't want as parents is to have a policy that maybe prefers those who have money to those who don't have money. Because if you remember last year, 2016 examination, It was not credible. I mean, it was credible 2016, but then we had almost 33,000 who had an E. So as parents, we're also concerned about your child. If a child of yours has an E and the other one has an A, you will think more of the one who had an E as a parent. So on the parent side, we think that we are much better now than before.
So from where you sit, how do you assess the quality of education in the country?
For now, I think come next year, 2018, there'll be more children coming in. There'll be more enrollment. And also we'll be having 100% transition from standard 8 to Form 4 to high school, from standard 8, from Form 4 to university. We'll have 100% transition.
Okay.
And the quality actually will not be compromised as such, as compared to other years, which actually our children our parents had no money, and then the children will just stay at home. So it's better the children are going to school now than in marginalized areas like Northeastern, Turkana. We had children who never went to school because they didn't have money. Even the 9,000 that is required for a day school. All right. Was just too much.
All right.
Yes.
Let's get the numbers from the expert. I believe you do a lot of research to do with education. What is the transition rate? Because he says he hopes that then this will translate to 100% transition.
I think the latest statistics which I saw were claiming that more than 8 million children were out of school in 2015, and yet we had the pre-primary education. It just shows you the problem of implementing the system itself. For me, I think what will work is not to have a blanket free education for everybody, because some parents can afford anyway. The idea is to consolidate all these bursaries and all this money into a basket, so that those who are unable to pay fees can have a process whereby they are unable to pay these fees within their schools. But a blanket pre-primary secondary system, I think doesn't work well.
So then what do you expect to see 2018 going forward? From the government?
From the government?
Yes.
For me, I would love to see them insisting more, emphasizing more in improving infrastructure. Even as they pull in more children in school, they should go hand in hand. Because you have libraries, which are fewer in some schools. The laboratory, can it accommodate the large number of people coming to school? It will be impossible. It will be a task which will be in futility. I think we need to improve our infrastructure.
All right. Thank you very much for joining us here on Katie. You have one more thing to add?
Yes, and then possibly lastly, I'm concerned about the parents who cannot pay the boarding school fees. I don't know what mechanisms will be there for them in January to be able to be enabled to get some sort of help so that they can be able to pay the 40,000 in the day schools in the counties, and then, of course, the 75,000 in the national schools.
All right, it's a conversation we definitely need to have. Brezhnev Otieno is the advocacy manager at Twaweza East Africa. In Eldred, we were joined live by the chairman of the National Parents Association, Nicholas Mayo, as we talk about funding education in the country. I want us to quickly